And we're live. Welcome everybody who's tuning in to the inaugural live law and batting order Q&A. As you know, I'm your host, Tony Costas. Some new changes to law and batting order, of course. I've condensed the format of the show, but I thought, let me just switch things up a bit. I think this would be a nice little touch to law and batting order. I know I've had Q&As in the past, but I think this is sort of like a more casual setting to have a conversation about sports law or sports business or things like that. So if you're just joining us, welcome. This is also being recorded as well, so you're not really missing on anything if you're not watching live. But we're certainly glad if you are watching out there that you are joining us. So I'm joined by my guest, Rich Pallarino, who Rich and I have had sometimes getting together before. He was actually an attendee at the Sports Law Symposium at New York Law School for some time, and we really just got to knowing each other within this past year. So I'm really glad to connect with Rich. He's very passionate about sports business, and we're very glad to have him on board in this chat as we launch the inaugural Law and Batting Order live Q&A. So with that, I do want to start off by asking Rich first, what inspired you to get into sports business? Perhaps you can share a little bit of your background.
Sure. So, Tony, first of all, thank you for having me on the show today. Secondly, to answer your question, getting into sports business has been a passion of mine and a dream of mine since about 15 years old. Not making my high school baseball team due to political reasons kind of showed me that certain athletes, whether or not it's high school or college or professional, need an advocate for their dreams, for their goals, and for their careers as well. That's the most important part.
Right.
So the athlete representation business is something I'm extremely passionate about, as well as other sports business entities. Just seeing that athletes need advocates on and off the field for enhancing their careers and maximizing their value on and off the field, something that really inspired me. And watching Entourage and Jerry Maguire only added to it.
Right.
But definitely going through it firsthand is what really inspired me.
That's certainly seems like the same path that I seemed to take down when I was interested in getting into sports business. I knew that I wasn't athletically talented. I really didn't have the same gusto that a lot of athletes seem to have in this day and age. But I think you can speak to how the industry really accommodates so many people. In my case, I'm very interested in sports law. That's really what it boils down to. I'm really passionate about how sports law works, how it functions. I love all the intricacies of criminal law and contract law and tort law and even down to intellectual property law, which is my main focus. And in your case, I think in your internship experiences, you seem to have had that type of experience. You were talking about advocacy, so it seems like you found that niche. What path did you go down as you were trying to find? And you're still finding it as you're still a student of sports business, as I am still a student of sports law. I'm still trying to find my way in it. But what ways or what methods did you implement as you try to find your way into sports business?
Sure. So, kind of what you said 2 seconds ago regarding the fact that we're still finding our ways. We want the viewers to know that we're not elite people that have set in stone careers and stuff like that. We're still learning and going on our paths as well.
Right.
So, getting back to the question, I took kind of a different route, sort of say.
Right.
When I was about 15 years old, when I didn't make my high school baseball team, I started Googling sports agents, started Googling business of sports. I got a little more in depth with the sports agent side.
Right.
What I did was I tried to find agencies. I didn't care if they were mom and pop shops, boutique agencies, CAAs, Wassermans. What I did was I called the numbers online. And I called and I said, hey, I'm this 15-year-old kid, Rich Pallarino from Staten Island, New York. I'm trying to get an internship in a couple of years at your place. What is it that you suggest I do to obtain that goal? I would get hung up on, I would get laughed at, I would get all different things, and nothing really positive. So going that route, I think that it really helped me because I learned the word no. I learned the word no in many different ways. No as in people hanging up on me. No as in no, we're not going to talk to you. no as in go find someone else that's going to listen to you, kid, because we have no time for you. So going down that route and taking that and tying it into the sports business route that I'm in right now, learning the word no was very valuable to me at such a young age. Because as you get older, you realize that you can't have, you're not a kid anymore. You can't have what you want all the time. So learning the word no was something that was really valuable to me, and that's kind of the route I took, which was a little different. And that's where I ended up where I am today because of that.
And no is such a powerful word. It's almost like the word you don't want to hear. And to speak to my own personal experience, I like to reflect back during my second year of law school. I was looking for an internship during my summer, well, the summer after I finished my 2L year, and I wanted to do, for the life of me, something sports related. I'd been working so hard with law and batting order. I networked with so many people, and I was convinced that the summer after 2L would be devoted to working in sports law. And it was actually during the whole week that we had Hurricane Sandy that I was just cooped up in my house, and I'm like, let me just write some resume, let me write some cover letters, let me send out some resumes, pack those in envelopes, and send them out to agencies, firms, teams, leagues, organizations, you name it. And I had never heard more no's in my life, either passively or aggressively. Passively in the sense of, they would never get back to me. So I'd sent out about 80 letters, so I got 75 passive no's, and then the 5 people or the 5 organizations that I heard back from, 4 of them said no flat out, and then there was one that led to an interview, but then it ultimately led to a flat out no at the end. And I think why that is so important is because you'll never be served something on a silver platter, and that's something I've learned, and I'm sure you've learned that as well. Being that you're in a very competitive industry, you do have to earn your stripes, and part of that requires trying to work hard, and even if failure exists, even if you are confronted with failure, specifically a no, that's not necessarily the end of your career. It's just you have to make an adjustment somehow. So I like that you were talking about that. Now, just touching on that no experience, I translate that as positive criticism. Some people will think of that as more of, almost like they'll have a defeatist attitude, so to speak. They'll think, well, I'm not good enough or anything like that. Did that notion ever cross your mind? Did you ever think that when you heard a no, that you just weren't meant to be in this industry? Or did you sort of translate it differently as time went on?
To be honest, Tony, what happened was learning the word no, like I said, helped. I would be lying to you if I said at certain times I didn't think that I was meant to be in the industry, but I more so believed in myself, and I always tell everyone, I'll bet on myself 11 times out of 10 times. So, and to do anything that that I'm faced with or a challenge I'm faced with. Kind of expanding on that point, the summer going into my junior year of college, undergraduate school, I was interning at Beverly Hills Sports Council. Just before that, I was interning at Wilhelmina as an agent assistant in the artist management division. During that time period, before I got to LA, I applied for 88 different internships, and I got responses from 2, both of them being yes. And that's when I knew, like everyone says, you get one opportunity, knock that door down, and build a home within that door.
Right.
So that's what I did, and every day I'm still hearing the word no, every day. And I've been in the industry for a few years, and now I don't think that I'm not meant to be in this industry. I just think that when I hear the word no, there's another opportunity somewhere else, and I need to build on that to get that other person to say yes.
Absolutely. I think that's a very positive outlook to have as you go forward. So you were talking about how you worked at the Beverly Hills Sports Council. I know that in speaking to you this summer, you had said that was your first crack in sports, or at least one of your early appearances in the sports business industry. Would you say that was probably the most influential internship opportunity that you had, or do you think that there were other ones that I know you were talking about more recently now, how you're working now at a firm and you're basically doing some agent advocacy in that capacity. Um, what do you think has been the best job experience, so to speak, that you've had so far?
Sure. So now going into my latter part of my junior year of undergrad, I do I feel that every summer has gotten better, and whether it's personal, whether it's work related, they both tie into each other, and it's gotten better. First summer, I didn't really intern anywhere, but I did a lot with political stuff and some campaigns. I said, wow, great summer. Second summer, intern at Beverly Hills Sports Council. At 19 years old, being out in LA and interning for a top 10 firm, it's unbelievable. I was like, wow, it can't get any better than this. This summer, like you said, I work with a firm and we do some sports agency stuff and athlete representation tasks. It got even better, and I didn't think that was possible. So doing what I do now, building what I'm building on, so constructing and taking that to a positive route, I think that it's really been great. Every summer has gotten better and better. But to answer your question, the influential part of Beverly Hills Sports Council, I do think that that was the most influential internship I had. For the sole purpose of that, it happened last summer of 2013, and people are still reaching out to me about that internship. It's getting me certain jobs, it's getting me certain offers. So I do think that it has been the most influential internship, probably next to my internship at Sony Music. Just being in entertainment and sports, as working at ABC, you're just in a different category. And it doesn't mean that you're better than anyone. It just means that you're noticed a little bit more.
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, I guess one topic that I think is synonymous with sports business is social media, because I think social media has been, at least for me, and I'm sure the same can be said for you, social media has been the tool that has allowed me to understand trends in the industry, be caught up with professionals, and basically social media has been my networking tool. To sort of, I guess, merge those two, social media and networking, how have you noticed the benefits of social media as you've slowly built your way into the sports business industry?
So, speaking on social media, I know a lot of people that either love it or hate it. There's kind of really no in between. Now, in our generation, being younger, social media is kind of the way. Now, it can hurt you, but it can benefit you. In my case, it has benefited me up to this point, because my first internship I ever had was with Jason Belzer of Game Inc., and I got that through posting on Twitter. So I think on Twitter, I know a lot of people say, hey, I'm building my brand and I don't want to have 1,000 followers and I'm following 2,000 people. I think that's something that people need to knock off. And I might sound like a hypocrite after the viewers go and look at my Twitter profile that I have over 5,000 followers and 210 following. That's because I go about the industry a little bit different. Some people use Twitter for purely sports information or to creep other people's profiles on breaking news and stuff like that and see where they went out on Friday night. I use it to kind of play around with my friends. But back to your question, I do know a lot of people that do have that. The Twitter, the LinkedIn, even LinkedIn's awesome. I know, Tony, you published a great article, your first one on LinkedIn, that has led to you connecting with a lot of hierarchy people as well. So having social media, even Facebook, I think Facebook is phenomenal because, I can't speak about my business because certain things are confidential within Facebook, but I could be very vague and say Facebook can create business, whether you know it or not. So I think having social media is a great tool if used properly. Like we know, you might have a car and use it for work purposes and for socially. That's a great purpose. Then you have the car with the other person. They're using it for racing and reckless driving. So that's kind of like my analogy of what social media can do for people. So I do think, to answer your question, it is very, very, very beneficial. At the same time, just be careful. And I don't like when people get into Twitter feuds. I don't think that it really benefits anyone. You want to have a conversation, it's different than having a feud. And I think what the viewers need to know is that if you're going to have a Twitter debate, quote unquote, or Twitter debacle, what you need to do is you need to not make it so public and have that conversation with someone. That's a great way to connect. You know, if you see someone on Twitter that says, hey, you know, I think the Ray Rice situation should have been handled differently. But meanwhile, you're that person that agrees with Roger Goodell and what he did, you know, instead of making it public and saying you're an idiot, why don't you connect with them and say, hey, you know, can we talk over the phone one time or converse, you know, share some emails over a conversation about this situation. And I think that's what social media needs to be used for, rather than embarrassing people and, you know, doing stupid stuff.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And actually, I tend to agree that social media can be a double-edged sword in the sense that, you know, I'm not trying to like throw my friends under the bus, but there are people who I think totally abuse social media. You know, they're putting up the photos of them with the red cups and back in the college days, they're in the frat house, and they've got pictures of booze pouring down their throats. And listen, if that's your way of having fun and having a party, okay, all the power to you. But you don't know who's watching your profile, right? You don't know if an employer is watching your profile. I know that sounds so cliched, but in this day and age, because of how accessible social media is, I wouldn't be surprised if people are watching each other, and that could include your employer watching you and how you behave outside the four walls of your office. In that same regard, I think having those types of photos, or just in general, having a type of persona that I guess could create some type of disagreement among people, I think that lowers your credibility, so to speak. I think it doesn't make you a credible person, and that's why I've always wanted to be very wise in terms of how I use social media. You know, on my Facebook I have my personal stuff, and even on my personal Twitter feed I got some personal stuff, and I put whatever I want. But for the most part, I'm very professional, and I really don't try to create any animosity or try to burn any bridges with people, because Twitter is a fantastic tool to create relationships. And in fact, you know, I can speak to from experience. You know, with you, we had met. I think I've definitely seen you in passing at the Sports Law Symposium at New York Law School. But I would say that we really made a connection this past symposium in February, and then it's sort of just like we got to connecting actually on Twitter, and look what this led to. So it just goes to show you that the power of social media is immense, and I've connected with a lot of great people on social media, and so have you. And I think the beauty of a tool like Twitter or Facebook or something like that is fantastic. And I think to sort of disregard it, and especially in this day and age where social media is such an immense tool, it's just I think it's phenomenal. And you know, and on the topic of social media, we did get some questions, and thank you to anyone who submitted questions earlier in the week. We had been asking you to use the hashtag LABO with RP to submit questions. And on the topic of social media, Brooklyn Law Professor Jody Balsam tweeted in a question. Thank you, Professor Balsam, for that. She asked, how can sports law aspirants, or in your case, Rich, sports business aspirants, how can they best use social media to advance their career? What are the risks of having a public Twitter, Facebook, etc.? So, you know, we sort of talked about the risks of, you know, I guess having a public Facebook, so to speak, or public Twitter. You know, you're more, you know, in the limelight if you're not careful with how you post material. But how can you best use social media to advance your career, Rich?
Sure. So I kind of touched upon it before when I got my first internship via Twitter. So getting my first internship via Twitter, after that internship, people looked at my resume a little more closely, gave me interviews where I feel that if I went to work for, let's just say, a local accounting firm or a local law firm, I don't think people would have gave me interviews or even looked at my resume unless I had that first internship, which is what kind of led me to the point that I'm at now. Also, another thing about social media, I'm going to speak primarily on Twitter. Having Twitter, like we talked about before, it's a double-edged sword, as you said. But having Twitter, following certain people, such as a Liz Mullen, to seeing what the transactions and what transpires day in and day out. She writes for Sports Business Journal. She does daily, tweets, daily articles, about sports agency business. So knowing that, I think that can really help you, whether you're applying for a job, whether you just want to know for yourself and understand yourself and you want to go into the business on your own. I think that's really, really, really beneficial. Learning how to do. There are people on Twitter who have accounts primarily for building resumes and building cover letters. So that's a way you can connect. It might be a business or it might be just a random service. Doing that can really benefit your career. And probably the last point I want to make is that when you're on Twitter, kind of being a third party on Twitter and watch how people connect with each other and watch how people speak to each other. And then you could say, oh, person X speaks to this person in a derogatory way, or they're kind of not answering them or something like that. Or you could say person Y is really, really, really connecting with someone else. Now, let me see their past few tweets on how they do it or something like that, and they're really successful at it, so let me mimic what they're doing. And I think that's something that people really don't shed the light on because they're not as involved as being a third party and learning from someone else, and no one really wants to do that. If you have people that really want to just do it themselves. But I think that's something that really people don't shed the light on, but I think it's really beneficial.
That is actually a very interesting observation, and I have seen that for sure. I've seen people connect on social media, and it's actually an interesting phenomenon because you're not really seeing the connection in action, but you're even seeing sort of like the I guess like the actual creation of ideas and beliefs sort of merging. It's an interesting phenomenon psychologically to see, and behaviorally too, how to see people connect from maybe they're in different areas of the world, or they study different areas of topics. God knows how many people I've connected that don't practice sports law. I just connected with them just to sort of create that bridge to make them know that I'm just as passionate about sports as they are, but that we may have different views about certain ideologies of sports. My niche may be sports law, but someone else's may be sports ethics or sports business, or even down to sports science, something like that. So definitely. And to answer Professor Blossom's question, I think I think the advantage of having a Twitter really is, from a career perspective, is immense because you really network with a great deal of people on Twitter. It's simple to just punch in sports law or sports business, whatever your passion is. It's easy to just punch that into the search bar, and you can get a people search of everybody who practices or is interested in that area of the sports business industry. And you would be surprised as to how many people are out there. And my tip to young students who are just entering law school or are just trying to find their way into the sports business industry or whatever, I highly advocate getting a Twitter. You would be surprised. I'm sure Rich can speak to this, but I have made a plentiful amount of connections, and it's great. It's convenient. It's a great news source in general. I use it even as a form to educate myself. I learn some new laws every day that I just never knew existed, and even seeing different perspectives on different subjects, especially as of late with Adrian Peterson. It's incredible to see how people could see hitting a kid as a form of discipline, but then you also see the other side of it as people saying this is child abuse. It's an interesting dichotomy to notice, and that's why I like Twitter so much. So I highly advocate that. And I do want to close this chat with one last question, and very apropos to conclude a discussion from Amanda Horton, who's a great follower to Law and Batting Order. She tweeted, any advice on how those aspiring to work in the sports business, specifically the legal side, can break in? So I can speak to sort of legal side, but Rich, if you want to answer the question, what advice would you have to those aspiring to work in the sports business break in?
So, I think you said, Tony, Amanda asked this question, and Amanda, that's an awesome question. To answer it completely honest, full honesty, I have to say that there's no one route that anyone can take to break into the sports industry. The sports industry is something that it's a different animal. Like if you want to go be an accountant or a CPA, you got to go through the 4 years of undergrad, take the CPA exam, get a certain amount of credits afterwards. That's the one route. The only variables in that is people might want to work at a regional, small, or large firm. The only variable. Medical, same thing. Law, pretty much the same thing, with some exceptions. The sports industry, there are so many fields. There's the sports business part. There's within that, It's a conglomerate of marketing. There's athlete representation. There's even working for a team where you're doing player personnel or community outreach, compliance at a college. So there's a lot of different variables. To get into sports, I kind of flip-flop every day, but I think what people truly need to do, and this is standard, and this is exactly what I believe. I believe that people need to network properly, whether that means going out to symposiums and connecting better in person, whether that means using LinkedIn properly and Facebook and sending out proper emails and messages, Twitter as well, like we spoke about before. Something else I think people need to do is stop saying you want to work in just one field of sports because you saw Jerry Maguire or Entourage.
Right.
I think that you need to do, if you truly want to work in sports, two things you need to do. We talked about the networking, but I'm going to add two more things. You need to have an understanding. And what I mean by that is understand what is going on. And if that means using Facebook and Twitter, go right ahead. If that means reading articles and just speaking to people about it, that's another route you could take. But people need to understand that working in sports doesn't mean you're going to know LeBron James and he's going to be the best man at your wedding. People need to understand that it takes years and years to finally get into sports. I have been working at it since I'm 15. I finally caught my break last summer. So, I mean, it takes years to build that. People need to understand that going into the sports industry, there's going to be a lot of people that are out to take your job, whether you know it or not. Whether they're your friends, your acquaintances, doesn't matter. They're out to take your job. It's the most cutthroat business I've ever seen, and I've been in 2 different industries. And then the other part where I think people need to do is they need to just take any internship or take any job that they feel that they can do a good job at, or it might lead to another thing, such as, for example, we saw this past summer a great story with the Jackie Robinson West Little League out in Chicago. You know, they're part of the RBI program. You know, people might say, oh, you know, RBI, I know Harlem has one, Tony. You know, that's a mutual one for us.
Yeah.
You know, Harlem RBI. If you want to work in baseball and you're in your second year of college and you haven't gotten an internship or a job, what's wrong with taking a volunteer position with RBI? You know, those people that went to Williamsport now, you don't think that they have great connections and they met a lot of cool people on the way? You know, so doing things like that, even if you don't get an internship, you meet a lot of cool people. You might actually find that you don't want to work in sports, but you like coaching in sports and you just want to have a good time with it. You know, it's different because working in sports is grueling compared to just watching Sunday football with a 6-foot hero on the couch. You know, so I think people need to understand, network properly, and if they truly want to work in sports, get the experience in any capacity possible. If you want to do management and you have a marketing internship, you know, that's a decision that you really make, and I think that makes or breaks whether or not you want to work in the sports industry.
And that's fantastic tips, and I especially like the point that you made about how if you want to work in sports, it goes beyond sort of the fanhood. You know, listen, I grew up a Mets fan. I mean, you know, I'm even wearing the shirt, but I grew up a Mets fan, and I was in the stands at Shea Stadium when I was 8 years old. That's when I fell in love with baseball. I mean, listen, it would be great to work in the baseball executive front office. It would be great to work for the Mets organization somehow, right? But the bottom line is I'm not banking on my fanhood to sort of get me that seat inside some executive office or elsewhere. I'm not banking on the fact that I love sports to get me the job in any sports-related entity. Because at the end of the day, it's about knowing the trends in the industry. It's knowing the topical issues that go on in a sports front office or in the sports industry in general that earn you that spot, a job in sports. So I do agree with that very much. You had touched on this also, I think earlier in the conversation, maybe in the breath of this one too. In essence, it's all about being open as well. My personal experience was you said it earlier. You said that, you know, some people are so fixated on being the next Jerry Maguire, and I was one of those people. In fact, when I entered law school, I was convinced that I would be a sports agent, without a doubt. I knew I was going to be the next Jerry Maguire because I watched the movie and I'm saying to myself, wow, this is fantastic, da da da. You know, when I started, networking with people, and as I started reading blogs like Darren's blog, Darren Heitner's Sports Agent blog, and as I started learning more about the sports agent business, and as I watched 30 for 30 films from ESPN on the sports agent business, I realized that wasn't the business for me. I realized that wasn't for me. So it required me to create a plan B, C, D, E, F, G, and so on. So to sort of to assure students who are trying to get into sports, sports law or sports business or any field of the sports business industry, my tip is to really be as open as you can, because regardless of whatever door is open, it'll somehow lead you to your ultimate career goal. In my case, I'm working at ABC News, so it's not sports law, but I'm working in-house, I'm working with great people, and I'm working for a very powerful media organization. The fact that I'm working there is a blessing, but the fact that I also have that on my resume could earn me a spot in sports somewhere down the line, whether it's a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, maybe when I'm 70, that's when I'll finally get my break and work in sports. Who knows? But the bottom line is I can't constrict myself to just working in one area of sports or one area of law or something like that, because I think that would do me a disservice, and it would do you a disservice as you're watching this if you just restrain yourself to just one area of sports or business or whatever you're very passionate about. To piggyback off of Rich's point, I do also agree networking is a great way to also break into the industry. You'll meet many people, you'll meet many different backgrounds, and you'll learn that there are various ways you can work in sports, whether it's marketing, compliance, player personnel, athlete representation. There are even criminal defense lawyers who represent athletes. It's a phenomenon. So they all exist. They come in different sizes and different colors, and you just have to sort of weed your way through it, and ultimately you will find your path somehow. And then, my last point is to really just always be open to learning. I guess it sort of it goes hand in hand with my be open about looking for different jobs. Always be open to learning, because I think if you learn about various areas of an industry, it expands your skill set. So in my mind, if I just knew intellectual property law, I couldn't create a website like Law and Batting Order, because then, Law and Batting Order covers an array of topics. It covers criminal law, contract law, tort law, intellectual property law, antitrust law. So if I just did intellectual property, I wouldn't be, Law and Batting Order wouldn't be what it is now. So always learn different topics, and remember that you're always a student in the industry. Even if you graduate, you're always going to learn. And it's a great feeling to always learn something new, because it just expands your skill set and it makes you wiser at the end of the day. And if you have questions, that's where the networking comes in. You can always network with somebody who may answer the questions you may have. So, it's just rest assured that it's a time process as you continue to get involved in the industry. You'll never get the job right away, right off the bat. But with time and patience, certainly something will pop up. So I guess it's just about 7 o'clock, and I guess our live Q&A is just going to wrap up now. I want to thank Rich again, but before we do end, Rich, can you tell people where to follow you, since we were talking about social media?
Sure. So you can follow me on Twitter at rpallarino. That's R as in Rich, P as in Peter, ALLARIN, and as in Nancy, O. Same thing for Instagram. LinkedIn is Richard Pallarino. And all my contact information is on there. And something that people need to know is that I can't stress this enough. Just because Tony and I are speaking doesn't mean that we're above anyone. Always connect with us. Always learn from each other. And we do this to learn from other people and to learn for ourselves, to better ourselves as well, and to serve you. So thanks, Tony.
Absolutely. And thank you for watching out there. I know we had a few viewers. But this was recorded, and this will be uploaded to the Law and Batting Order Vimeo channel. So I'd like to thank you for that. Also, do not forget to watch my special report on Ray Rice, which I uploaded late last night, Saturday. It is up on the Vimeo website, so you can check it out. It's episode 66. I call it The League of Denial, the NFL Ray Rice debacle. So be sure to watch that. And I will see you next week for a brand new episode of Law and Batting Order. So be sure to watch Law and Batting Order at lawandbattingorder.com, and be sure to follow Law and Batting Order on Twitter at LawNBO. Facebook is Law and Batting Order, and Instagram at LawNBO. So until next time, have a great week, guys.